And so as soon as you have an awareness of an old habit that you're trying to get rid of, it's just having the awareness of like, oh shit, I'm doing it.
Yeah, call it out.
I'm doing that thing.
Yeah.
But not judgment, not guilt, not shame, just I'm doing it. Which then means I can stop. And in that, I start tackling gratitude onto it. So as soon as I catch it, thank you for noticing. Thanks for noticing we don't have to waste any more time. Thanks for choosing something else. Thanks for choosing this other version of us that we want to be.
That's great.
The amount of love that you're capable to receive is a reflection of how much you care about you.
Wow.
Because if you don't like you, and everyone's like, oh, you're great, I love you, you think they're full of shit, then that sets your boundaries, that sets your standards, that sets with how I allow people to talk to me.
Bro, welcome to Dieting from the Inside Out.
Yeah, dude.
What's going on?
Man? It's been a hell of a day.
I know. So for everyone listening, I just met this man, and as soon as he started talking, I go, I have to get him on the podcast. And we're speaking at the same event, and I basically said, you want to go upstairs to Mike's studio? And Mike's been on the podcast, and he said, yeah, let's do it. So I don't even know where to start. Like,
right on. That's like, great for me.
And that's why one I go mostly off the cuff for whatever I do, and I know you pretty well operate very. I mean, after watching your talk today, it was very similar, and I thought it was fantastic. So, give a little bit of an idea of who you are and your story.
Matt Vincent. Done a lot of random things.
A lot.
Yeah. Kind of built a following doing Scottish Highland Games. And got into that sport, built content around that, gained a following, won a couple world championships, wrote a couple books about it, got injured, and then really put all my energy into an apparel company I had began right at the end of my career and focused on that for a decade and built a 7-figure annual business. That's awesome. And then about 2 years ago, really came to an honest conclusion of like I didn't want to do it anymore. I just wasn't drawn to running it.
Wow.
And yeah, man, I'm not talented enough to make things work that I'm not in love with. I've tried.
I resonate with that.
And it just doesn't work. And
Yeah.
so it's either fuck yeah or no.
Yeah. I love that.
And so it became a like, oh, it's got to go.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of interesting identity tied to it.
Yeah,
After
man.
doing it for 10 years and all that and being able to pivot and
Wow.
wonder who's going to give a shit. But it was the same feeling I had when I got injured. Of like, oh man, I built this audience around throwing and competing and doing all this and then hurt. And I'm like, no one's going to care. This is all gone.
Wow.
And it's never been true.
So it's interesting. Like I know we didn't even talk about what the podcast is about. So the podcast is called Dieting from the Inside Out, where it's almost exclusively talking about how the inner game mindset, identity work applies to like literally any. I mean, it goes down to anything you want to achieve or whatever, but mostly in the realm of weight loss with our community. But just there's so much that you talked about on your talk today around the ego, around identity, around taking care of yourself. Like there's just so many. I feel like we could take this conversation a million different ways.
Probably.
So I think a good way to kind of see what's supposed to come through. Talk about your book, because the concept of like your book, because
what fun.
And ironically,
there's one sitting here.
I literally
ironically enough,
guys, I swear to God that this, like, I had no idea that was his book until we sat down and he goes, "Hey, that's mine." So talk about this.
So I've been working on this for a while. One of the things that's been kind of popular with my audience for a long time is I've put out a weekly email, this Monday Motivation.
Okay.
And it's been an essay, and I don't know, I've got 300 plus of them or so written by this point. And so I wanted to put something together. So we went through them and kind of reworded a bunch of things. And I wanted to put together a book that kind of talks about not dead yet, and this handbook for the living.
Yeah.
For those people really wanting to create the life they want.
Sure.
And a lot of the self-help books I've read blend in a bit. And for me, being much more of a visual learner and wanting something tangible and dealing with ADHD and my own ability to focus and read or do any of that, I wanted to create something really digestible. And so it's got, an essay, 52 different essays with journal prompts, and then some photos from our travels, like this trip to Iceland.
Oh, those are all of your photos?
Yeah,
That's even
so this
better.
is a trip to Iceland we were on in 2021.
Wow.
That's my wife and I in Alaska.
That's awesome.
And then Where's that? Alaska. There's us in Egypt. The pyramids.
It's beautiful.
And there's a variety of stuff in it. It's pictures of us. It's pictures of people in our community who travel with us. And it's been really something I was really proud of. The kind of dedication to it, the why. I'll just read it.
Yeah.
So this handbook is dedicated to both my father, who passed away 10 years ago as of today that I'm writing this, and a younger version of myself who didn't know what to do with that reality. This is a handbook that I wish I'd been given the day of my father's funeral. And while I know 31-year-old me was far too arrogant and filled with hubris to read it yet, the next few years, once shit hit the fan, he would have to open it and find what he needed to change about how he sees himself and the world around him. That journey into the dark will be a necessary one for him. This handbook will help shine light to discover the path out of that depression and darkness. And in that darkness, this book will help shed that old identity and start forging the new, better, happier, proud, loving, vulnerable, healthy, consistent, honest, and most capable version of myself. The early death of my father started a shift in my awareness about the importance of the here and now. The death removed this blissful ignorance of thinking there will always be time to do it later, that nothing is promised. I'll never forget that. Your death was a gift to showing me how important life is. Thank you for everything you taught me. I'm honored to carry the great parts forward.
Wow.
And so, man, that time in the journey where you have to kind of go into the dark, that's part of the hero's journey. There's got to be this point where you leave the known for the unknown.
Yeah.
And in that process, we've got to rediscover ourselves, and we've got to shed the old, the old baggage. We've got to get rid of the things that are holding us back. First, build awareness around them without an emotional attachment. Why do I do that?
Yeah.
Instead of like, how dare I do that?
Sure.
Because you're just not going to shame and guilt yourself into a great life. Like, it doesn't work that way.
I wish people would hear that.
It just doesn't work.
Yeah. At the end of the day, like, I think I said it came out on a call with someone the other day where it was the concept of we shame ourselves or should ourselves to try to persuade our actions in a bow wrapped in guilt. And it just doesn't work. Like, on paper, it's like, I'm going to guilt myself into doing this. But imagine if I tried to coerce a child into behaving a different way or someone. It's the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. It just, I don't know. I tried it long enough.
Yeah.
I found that operating out of abundance and being able to see how great things already are and have the awareness around that instead of operating out of scarcity really
That's beautiful.
opened everything up.
Something you said in your talk, and I just thought it was profound, that hit me a lot, was when you said, I can't remember exactly how you articulated it, but you said it around the side of we're not so conditioned for survival, but you were talking and alluding to how the predisposition of our brains are just all about catastrophizing these patterns for survival. So we almost have to go extra on the offense just to not drift that way. I'd love to hear you talk more about that.
So that idea, right, is, if we're looking at things on like a really long timeline of our species,
Right.
a couple 100,000 years, it's really important to threat identify. It's important to notice what's killing us and not killing us, and so that you continue to learn. I mean, even more so, like when we're born as humans, we're useless. Like, we're a useless bag for quite a while.
Useless skin sack.
Yeah,
absolutely.
but look at us, right? Like, we're big eyes and a big brain. And so we're born to just observe and be a sponge and start soaking in as much information as we can to learn how not to die.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have real threats for the most part, especially in Western culture. I would say most of the people capable of listening to this podcast,
Right.
things are probably going all right. But because we don't have any real threat to measure that thing, that's still part of our genetic code, and like threat detection is built in.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got to be conscious
Yeah.
to fix that subconscious pattern. The way, one of my favorite ways I've heard talking about like rewiring the subconscious, right? You ever heard the theory of like elephant and the rider?
Not by that label.
Okay. So the subconscious is this elephant.
Yep.
And so elephants don't make 90-degree turns. They don't make 180-degree turns. And like, so over time, like, your elephant's on this path. That's the subconscious. It's going that way. You, The rider is the conscious decision maker. And to get the elephant to turn, like, you have to prod it, you have to coerce it, you've got to seduce it, you've got to be nice to it and get it over there so that it feels safe to change. Now, as it changes and it takes a long time, the thing people really miss is it's not permanent. That if there's ever a real threat that pops up, and it's not even a real threat, whatever the perceived threat is that pops up enough to spook the subconscious, to spook the elephant goes back to the original path.
The old familiar.
Totally, right? It got pushed out of its own, like, total levels of being safe. Boom, straight back to it. That's going to happen.
Sure.
It's part of the plan of change. But it's easier to coerce the elephant over again.
Sure.
But it's always going to get pushed back if you're pushing yourself. The conscious rider is the one that constantly has to get back on. And so in that process of, like, changing yourself and growing your life and building more awareness around what you want, it's really easy it's this all or nothing approach. And, like, if it's not perfection, I fucked up.
Yeah.
And then I quit. And then there's the shame behind the elephant went back to the old path. And so I don't do anything about it. And so next thing I know, I've burned 2 weeks back on the old path, right? Instead of trying to eliminate the slip-ups, the things that spook the elephant, because you can't.
Right.
They're going to show up.
Yep.
The best thing you can do to really alter your life is how quickly can I get the elephant back to path the way I want it to go. It's accepting that it's occasionally going to get spooked.
Sure.
But instead of giving it any extra time there, just immediately, so what I teach is this catch method. And so as soon as you have an awareness of an old habit that you're trying to get rid of, it's just having the awareness of, like, oh shit, I'm doing it.
Yeah, call it out.
I'm doing that thing.
Yeah.
But not judgment, not guilt, not shame, just I'm doing it. Which then means I can stop.
Yeah.
I can choose something else. And in that, I start tackling gratitude onto it. So as soon as I catch it, it shifts into, thank you for noticing. Thanks for noticing. We don't have to waste any more time. Thanks for choosing something else. Thanks for choosing this other version of us that we want to be.
That's great.
So it's this positive reinforcement for every time we slip.
Yeah.
The goal is eliminating the catch time. How much wasted time got put back on the other path when I was just on the subconscious.
Right.
And going like,
That's awesome. Well, the other thing I hear when you say that, and this is something that I preach to my listeners, is you aren't what you do, right? Where like just because you do something doesn't make who you are. Like we talk a lot about issues with food. Like if someone binge eats, that doesn't mean they're a binger. Binger is a noun. Binge ate is something in the past. It's an action you do. It's a verb. But I think too many people, let's say like all or nothing. Like since you brought that up, is because there was an all or nothing pattern that came up. You go, oh, that must be who I am. And then it turns into this big self-fulfilling prophecy. But you said, I'm doing it again, which is the way that I see it. That's such big progress because you stepped outside the pattern. You said, that's it. Not, I'm it. You said, that's it.
I don't identify as the old pattern. It was learned.
Yeah, 100%. That's awesome.
It's if I'm aware that the environment I grew up in, the people I was around, the surroundings I had, whatever they were, good, bad, indifferent, traumatic, not traumatic, who cares? They shape you.
Yeah.
And they form your idea of normal. But they were learned.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that's got to be recognized. Is that the reason this is on autopilot is because you've given it a lot of reps. So if we want to change the autopilot, just like changing technique in a sport, changing technique in everything, it's got to be conscious decisions to change that thing.
Yeah. It's there's a level that and this is the one I had a hard time with myself personally, because the ego doesn't like this, but with most, we'll call it not so helpful patterns anymore. In a weird way, it was a thing that you learned, so it actually served you in a really weird way. So which means there's like when I have someone do like inner child work or healing these deeper parts or whatever, like part of that is we got to become almost grateful for it. Like the mom that learned binge eating because she couldn't handle her parents' divorce when she was 6. Like, well, that's, you need to thank your inner child for like, hey, thank you for getting us through that and doing the best that you could. It doesn't mean we're encouraging the behavior, but saying, you know what, that's the best that version of me did. Thank you. We can relieve of our duties now, But there has to be a level of gratitude. Like, you know, that was the best that kid knew how to do it. And if you knew better, you would have done better. But you were fucking 6.
Also, it was a survival tool, and we're not in survival.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know, we get to be in rest and relax. We get to be in abundance. We're not always in that fight or flight.
Mm-hmm.
And figuring out how to down-regulate. And like what you talk about these past experiences with that, what I really believe is my perception informs my reality.
Yeah.
So the better I am at understanding my perception of events and figuring out how to put them in the right container of gratitude and what I did learn and how do I get better from it, gives me a better chance to continue on.
Yeah.
Right? That like, oh shit, okay, I can see the positive benefit that I yielded from that thing. And especially if there's ever a moment that you can get present and get grateful and get dialed in, that means it took everything to get here. We can't cut any parts out.
Yeah.
That's all part of the journey. It's not the old you. It's not this past. Like, it's your story. It's your hero's journey is overcoming and healing these wounds.
Sure. We like it when it's in movies. Like
Sure.
hero's journey, like watching whatever. But when it's us that has to go through it, it's like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's not for everyone. Lots of people just happily live in mediocrity.
Right. Yeah. The other thing I was wanting to hear about more, they sound incredible. And even the impromptu gentleman today that was talking about the retreats you guys do. So I would love to hear more about like what happens at these retreats, because number one, I think my audience would like it just from the little bit I've heard, I think it would be extraordinary. But I mean, to be someone who hosts an event of any sort, people come in like literally the guy at the event today said the growth that he had in all areas of his life, it gave him like a 5-year jump start, right? It's like somebody like people sign for coaching with someone like us. It's you're shortchanging time.
That's it.
So for you, what happens? Like we use your retreats as like a tool, like a teaching tool. Like what happens at these retreats? What do you do for these people that make such time bending transformations internally?
So my men's retreat, and then my wife hosts a women's retreat in St. Louis. We do 2 a year. So I've got one in April, and then I've got another coming up in October that's got some spots available, and then we have a big group retreat. Similar version for both. The big group retreat's co-ed, and so it's got a bit of a different energy.
Sure.
So the men's retreat, and I'll speak to that and let my wife talk about her thing.
For context, most of my audience is women, but
perfect.
But the principles apply. But regardless, we'll put all the info
same
below.
Idea,
so.
Right? Like, but it's getting people present again, helping people actually learn some tools for down regulation. Yeah. So a couple different modalities of breath work, using the sauna, using the cold plunge, finding some areas of discomfort to play in, so that we can play with that fight or flight response and realize it doesn't need a reaction. We're uncomfortable. We're not in danger. And then me being able to handle it and be like, yeah, we're okay.
Sure.
We can manage it. We can think through it. We can solve this instead of getting stuck in reactionary and running away. And so helping people tap into that and then amplify it with a group of people that are also into tapping into that. So it's giving some tools around journaling and building that awareness, because that's the stages I really believe of change, right, are inspiration, awareness, intention, and action. If we've gotten on a phone call or you've come to my retreat, inspiration is sorted.
Sure.
You don't need
I can see that.
Right? Awareness then is that next big tool. So how do I build this bigger awareness of who I am, what I want, what are my habits, what are the habits that will benefit me, what direction do I want to go, getting clear on that, so that I can then make some decisions. And then that next level is, okay, so what are the intentions that changing those habits causes? Why am I doing it? And how do I make that so important to me that it's always worth doing to some degree? Not perfection, but persistently.
Yeah.
That's the change, right? Like, it's figuring out, how do I bring up my low days? How do I set my bare minimum floor for, like, what's the minimum effective dose that I need to do this to keep moving the needle?
Right.
Instead of having 0 days. Because everyone can do it on the day they feel good. Man, I don't need to coach anybody on that.
Sure.
It's days it sucks.
Yeah.
And then the final is action. Is like, what's the actionable plan of attack? Like, what are your non-negotiables know you need to be? Is it breath work? Is it 5 minutes by yourself in the morning? What's it like? When do you prioritize yourself? How does that happen? Or do you just
have time.
Wait? You know, I don't have time. All these other people in my life, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, great. So why are they more important than you?
Wow.
Why aren't you important enough? Why aren't your dreams as important as everyone else's? And why do you think you can keep taking care of everyone else if you don't take care of you? You don't think the vessel that you're operating from to help them is important?
That's good.
I disagree.
Yeah.
People that want to be a good father, a good mother, a good family member, any of this, to talk about, well, I just want to be there for my family. Good, start showing up for you. Instead of maybe teaching your kids that your entire life's this martyr around serving them. And then they'll repeat the process.
That's so good. Yeah.
Why don't you show them how to dream? Why don't you show them how to change? Why don't you show them how to be accountable? Why don't you show them how to care for themselves? As an example.
Yeah. I think so much in my experience, a lot of the like why not is that and usually most people they aren't aware this is going on. There's this like unconscious belief of it's because I'm not good enough, because I'm not worthy, because I'm not. How would you unpack that with somebody?
I would start wondering why. Why aren't you worthy? I would just ask.
Yeah.
So why aren't you worthy of your own time? And then keep going.
Yeah.
Right? Like keep digging into it. And I don't necessarily believe that we have to dig out the roots of anything.
Okay.
As long as we have an awareness of like, I don't know why I've been doing that. I'd like to stop. Yeah. And then we can.
Yeah.
But be aware that subconsciously that's what's going on. The elephant's going to try to get back on path if we're stressed. If it's the weekend and now we're triggered because we're bored and I'm hungry and I want this, the elephant takes over, man.
Sure.
But instead, like having some awareness to maybe just be able to say like, oh man, I'm feeling that thing of like I'm bored, so I'm just going to do mouth pleasure and eat food.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Like, I know, man. Like I used to be 320 pounds.
Yeah.
Like mouth pleasure. That's what I want.
For sure.
I'm not hungry.
Yeah. You want to escape.
Yeah. I want mouth pleasure, dude. This is great.
Sure. That's right.
And so like, all right, how about I go for a 30-minute walk and decide if I still want it?
Yeah.
Let me buy a little bit of time. And a lot of time, if I can just get out of that window and catch it and go do this other thing that does align.
Yeah.
An easy thing, low barrier of entry to break the pattern. And then lean into that gratitude to start rewiring. Thank you for doing it. Thanks for choosing this. Thanks for showing up and agreeing to follow through on what we said we wanted to. Thanks for this being important. Thanks for making us important enough to ourselves.
That's so good.
Thank you for loving me. Thanks for loving myself.
Yeah.
The way I love everyone else in my life. Because what I also believe is this. The amount of love that you're capable to receive is a reflection of how much you care about you.
Wow.
Because if you don't like you, and everyone's like, oh, you're great, I love you, you think they're full of shit.
Oh, no, I'm not. They're being nice. They're just saying that because they're my hairstylist. Yeah. Every time. That's good.
So, like, the self-love is the big factor. Then that sets your boundaries. That sets your standards. That sets with how I allow people to talk to me. Because I no longer talk to me in a way I wouldn't allow someone to talk to me.
So good. So let's say someone says, okay, I get it, but I hate myself. How do I start to love myself?
Why do you hate yourself?
I don't know. I always have.
Okay. Well, then let's figure out what are some actions that would feel good to you.
That's good.
What does self-love look like to you? How do you take care of yourself? Have you tried being outside, getting in the sun, drinking more water, breathing,
treating
journaling.
yourself like a good human,
being a fan.
Yeah.
Maybe giving yourself some new skills, or just instead of the embarrassment of like, I'm embarrassed I haven't learned how to feed myself as an adult. Just admitting that and then deciding to learn.
Yeah.
But if I can't just admit it and I hide, I can't fix it.
Yeah.
If there's a leaky faucet in a bathroom, you can't just shut the door and keep changing drywall around it. Go in and deal with it, man.
Right.
The sooner we get in there and deal with it, the less problem it is. Otherwise, it's just going to get louder.
Yeah.
The same the anxiety does, the same the negative voice in our head does. And as long as we're trying to distract ourselves with it and disassociate from it and cure the side effect of the voice instead of what's creating the voice, it will get louder until it has to smash you in the face with a hammer.
Yeah.
And perhaps that's, oh shit, I don't fit in places anymore. Oh shit, I don't like the way I look. Oh shit, I don't feel attractive. I've lost intimacy. I'm not connected to my partner.
Right.
Like all those things are the side effect of avoiding it.
That's huge. That's so good, man. What's there's so many places I want to go with this conversation, but we've got like till dinner.
You don't live that far from me, man. We can rip all the time. I got a podcast studio in my office.
Oh, that's awesome. So for you, when it comes to some of these inner game techniques, like you always talk about journaling, breath work, and things like that. Amongst my community, my listeners like big on that. Like I think it's super important to give tangible, actionable things that people can do like that. So I'm curious, just personally, what are some of like the journal stuff you have people do? Like what are some of like your like go to, like there's a million ways to journal.
Totally.
Right? So for you, like what comes up though for most people that you like to, or that you do personally, whatever.
So if I start with someone who doesn't have any familiarity with journaling, I've got a lot of stuff I can say to people. Here's 60 prompts, do one a day.
Right.
But a really easy start is every day write down like what brought me enthusiasm today. Because I don't want to say happiness. Happiness is a moment. I want to be enthusiastic.
Sure.
Enthusiasm, I show up. What brought me enthusiasm today? What stole my energy?
Negatively.
Yeah. What stole my energy today? And number 3, what did I learn? Right? And so over the course of like a month, what brought me enthusiasm and what stole my energy starts setting as a compass. We can start looking back and realize that we got to get away from this and we got to move toward that.
Sure. That's good.
That's a really good place to start. And then, man, there's some ugly ones. Journaling prompts that you can dive into.
I mean, the 2 of the journal prompts I use with my programmer, one's called the coma letter.
Okay.
And the other one is a straight message to your inner child. So we get, like, I'm all about getting in and let's heal all. Let's get through that. So if you got some...
the inner child stuff's so fascinating. And I had a really good childhood with great parents. And my inner child stuff is all around expectations of like not matching it up, being the underachiever between my brother and I, and was never expressed. Only I felt. I felt for a long time that if I'd have just been him, everyone would have been happier. But I'm not.
Sure.
I'm a weirdo.
Sure.
And my brother's great, and we have a lovely, wonderful relationship. And over the years, like I realized that like I didn't marry my high school sweetheart. I wasn't a valedictorian. Wasn't an All-American athlete. I didn't get a full ride to Division I school and have an academic scholarship as well.
Why pick a fence, 2.5 kids?
Totally.
Dog,
Totally, right? And I judged myself a lot by that like, I was so off pace. I'm so far behind. Everyone's disappointed. Like, everyone knows I'm fucking up. And it just wasn't true. And so the inner child thing, I've done some... we had a coach come out to my retreat in Idaho last September, and she does inner child work. She was a PRN for 30 years and now is working like in ketamine therapy and helping people with inner child stuff and trauma. One of the things she walked us through is this meditation, and eventually gets us to where we speak with our 7 or 8 year old self. And man, it was really fascinating to see him. And like the only thing I had to say was like, you're doing fine. That's all I wanted to tell him. It's like, you're doing great.
Because that's what he needed.
You're really doing great.
It's awesome.
Like, I promise. And like, not only that, the one reason I can feel strongly to say that to him, right? Is because if 8-year-old me met me, he'd fucking dig my life.
It's incredible. I love that.
Live a life that 8-year-old you and 80-year-old you is proud of.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when you abandon that child, you abandon dreams, you abandon the ability to think too far, and you limit everything.
It's interesting you bring up 8 and 80 because for me, so I do some of the inner game stuff that I do, like, and it's kind of weird, but it's so helpful. And one of the things that I did is, so I had this idea that if we can do inner child work and go into the past, I can chat with that little fella and basically say, like literally have these things and heal parts of me. And if you want to go crazy, like in quantum stuff, like all moments exist. Like, okay, same.
Yeah,
literally got a vibration tattoo on my neck.
Yeah. I'm whole thing.
Well,
I
so
love it all.
I'm like, what would my 80? What would I actually think of it as reverse inner child work? So I go, what would my 80-year-old self tell me right now? And I actually will go, like, full disclosure, I want to get on mushrooms and do this specific meditation. I want to go.
Have you practiced a lot of?
Not a lot. I'm newer into playing
on,
with playing with mushrooms.
Plant medicine in general, new too.
Yeah, in general, I don't do a lot. Like mostly, I've just dabbled in some mushrooms, and I love I've just a little bit. I played with. I get a lot out of it without, and part of me just wants to do a hero dose and go talk to God and see what happens. But
I do it, but don't have any expectations about it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that was my problem when I'm messaging my buddy that I got it from, and I'm like, what's going wrong? He goes, dude, you're trying to, or you're not going to get shit out of it. But
I got my ass kicked with that 2 nights in Costa Rica with ayahuasca.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I went down with so much excitement about like this experience.
With ayahuasca?
This experience I had built up of like how this is going to go. Let's go.
Because it's like the king of
I want it. Like, I want 8 hours of crazy DMT. Give it to me.
Yeah.
And I got 2 nights and nothing.
Wow.
And I felt so unworthy, and I felt so like, of course it doesn't work for me. Of course. And like, I felt so empty and disappointed. And then the 3rd night it worked just fine.
Yeah.
But that medicine gives you what you need, not what you want.
Yeah. Well, and for me, and again, like this is one of the things that's made me interested in some plant medicines, but specifically like psychedelic stuff, is that I will, I feel like, we'll just say sober or without anything, I can access some crazy stuff. I feel like I had a meditation the other day because I've been working personally on some working through some stuff, like some old self stuff, ego stuff, universal higher power stuff, and I literally had the most surreal out of body experience, and I was 100% awake. I didn't like fall asleep and dream it. It's like when I was on mushrooms.
Yeah.
It was a wild experience, but I will do some of this meditation work, and I'm like, especially if I'm like in a low moment, like I'm going through some stuff, I'm feeling like lack of clarity, I'm in my own head, patterns or whatever, and I'll go in, I'm like, what would my 80-year-old self say to me right now? Like I was actually on my back. The first time I did, I was on my back patio. I had a nice little fire. I was literally meditating and just quiet for like a half hour. And I visualized as hard as I could. And I don't understand people who can't like visualize things.
Sure.
Like the whole concept of like visualize an apple. It looks like a cartoon apple.
Yeah.
I can like feel it.
Totally.
You know what I'm saying? Well, I'm like, okay, 80-year-old Jared's across the fire from me. What would he tell me about XYZ problem? And I would just, in my head, listen. Dude, I filled up 3 pages of note, and I'm like, I don't know where that came from, but like that was not me.
So that's a super interesting practice. Are you familiar with Alex Hormozy's talked about it? This old man that he speaks to. So he's got this like weekly appointment where he talks to this old version of himself.
Yeah. So between that and some stuff I got from old school Napoleon Hill, that's where I came out with this concept.
Yeah. So as long as this old version of you is the highest version of you that got to 80.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's a really fun guy to talk to.
Yeah.
And the way that question goes, right, that if I'm asking him about this problem I'm dealing with, or I'm thinking about this other thing, this confusion or this someone else's thought around what I'm doing, right? Like whatever, someone else's perception of my beliefs or any of this, or holding myself back or any of this. And that old version always looks in like, you gonna let them get in the way of becoming me? I'm like, nah.
Yeah.
They don't get a vote.
One of the other prompts that I'll do with it, I'll just go, what do I need to hear right now? Because a lot of inner game stuff is people will like the ego will sneak in on the back of it and like just sneak in and cause like outcomes and expectation, all this other stuff. And but one of my favorites is, what do I need to hear right now? And then it's usually something around like you doubt too much or stuff like you need to treat yourself better, or like these, fuck yeah, you're right. Fuck yeah, you're right. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, getting the message, right?
Yeah.
Something you said there, though, that is really important with that conversation of what do I need to hear right now? And to hear that, you need to get still. And you need to get present, and you need to get out of your own way. And so many people are really comfortable with the ADHD thing. And of course we are. And I hate that we identify with it. They're like, oh, I'm ADHD. Like, get fucked. So are you saying you can't focus?
Right.
Because I bet, like, if you and I put on boxing gloves right now, I bet I have your undivided attention.
Sure.
So how about something less than a fight for you to be focused?
Yeah.
Because you just proved to me you can focus. So why don't we work on it like a skill that we were never taught?
Yeah.
And in a current world with as much going on as we do have, of course ADHD is great. The ability to multitask is a great skill.
Yeah.
But so is the ability to focus. And if you don't have that side, then you need to practice being still.
Yeah.
If you're one of those that's like, oh man, I could sit on the couch, scroll on my phone, and stare at the TV for 8 straight hours, ask you to turn both of those off, and you feel like your skin's being boiled off of you,
Yeah.
maybe sort some shit out.
Yeah. Yeah. But then one would also be able to argue like you have insane focus on your phone right now. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like,
except like it's got you.
yeah, 100%. I totally agree with you. Yeah.
Whether it's your phone or whether it's going to be, I'm not a big fan of alcohol, but let's use that as an example. I don't really believe good or bad, right or wrong.
Sure.
User error.
Right.
Right? Take all the accountability back to you. Quit fucking giving it to anything else.
Yeah.
It's user error. It's not the problem. It's how I operate with it, right? Like, what's my intention of why I'm doing this? Am I scrolling because there's something I need to find? Or am I disconnecting?
Sure.
So am I using this as a connection or a disconnection? And if it's disconnection, it's got to go.
Yeah.
It's got to get slowly eaten out.
One of the other things that you talked about today that I thought was really awesome was is your necklace.
Yeah.
So like when you were saying like, what's your gratitude practice? And I'm like, well, I mean, I look at my tattoo about 100 fucking times a day. As a little reminder, I'll do gratitude. I'm like, what's he talking about? And then your practice you do with your necklace is just like blew everything out of the water. I would love to hear you talk about that because I think it will. But then also not just that, but the difference when it comes to the mental stuff in your life and the quality of your life because you have a gratitude practice you do so religiously.
Yeah. Because like that well of gratitude is so deep for me.
Yeah.
Like I can see it. Like I know how great things are in my life.
Yeah.
And have always been. Essentially being born in 1983 to 2 parents that love me, I've kind of been par since then of what I've really accomplished.
Sure.
Now, the gratitude practice, if we are pre-wired to threat detect and be able to see problems, then that's what we're going to see all the time. So if that's the elephant, sees the problems,
Right.
then the conscious part of me, the rider, has to focus on the good. I've got to be able to see it. I've got to create that perception that informs my reality of how great things are.
Right.
It's being able to say, the way I use it is in my practice, I sit and go through the beads. And it didn't start this way. I picked up a mala probably 4 or 5 years ago now.
Okay.
And then I started adding it into my practice. And I don't remember how it became that, but it was just a thing that I can put my hands on and touch, and I've got with me all the time, right? And
for context, those who are listening to the audio, it's
wooden beads on a string. I can make it sacred like it's something special, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's special to me.
Right.
It's not sacred. Fucking
You're sacred.
bingo. The words I'm saying are.
Yeah.
That's the spell casting.
Yeah.
That's anything. It's
Yeah.
all the same shit. Manifestation, spell casting,
Yeah,
prayer,
yeah.
gratitude, whatever we call
Yeah.
it. And so with these beads, the mala, my wife makes them if anyone's interested. But this one's got a bit more of a fun story to it, but I'll share afterwards.
Okay.
But I go through each of the beads, and it sounds like, thank you, universe, for all the hard days that got me here. Thank you for the ability to change. Thank you for the ability to choose the life I want. Thank you for the ability to keep showing up. Thanks for choosing the life we want to connect to. Thanks for being the best version of ourselves. Thanks for these legs that work. Thanks for these feet that plant me on the ground. Thanks for all the love that I have in my life. Thanks for loving me the way my wife loves me. Thanks for taking care of myself the way I want to be taken care of. Thanks for taking power back in my own life. Thanks for not getting caught up in the past. Thanks for using the past as a learning tool and nothing more. Thanks for focusing all my energy on the days in front of me that I actually have something I can do with. Thanks for continuing to create the future I want. Thanks for all the clients I get to work with. Thanks for the great income I have. Thanks for all the warm beds I've slept in. Thanks for the refrigerator full of meals.
Yeah.
Thanks for the so much abundance of food that I was 100 pounds heavier than this at one point. Thanks for only ever feeling hungry because I needed to lose weight, because I couldn't manage the abundance in my life.
Wow.
thanks for being able to choose the hard things that create the adaptation I want. And I worked my way through 108 of them. And I've done that practice for quite a while, and that was part of my kind of morning routine, and I've noticed this huge shift in it. So, like, that action, like, I look at it as like it's a button I can push.
Yeah.
Takes 3 minutes, costs me nothing.
Yeah, right.
Doesn't hurt at all.
Right.
The same as the cold plunge, the same as the sauna, the same as any of the going for a walk outside, same as journaling and doing any of that. I've never done any of those things and been like, fuck, that was a waste.
Right. Yeah.
Like, they always move the needle
Yeah.
some.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, like, if I have some actionable things that move the needle and I choose not to do them, quit fucking telling me you want to be different.
Yeah.
You can't have it both ways.
Yeah. It's
You either
beautiful.
do it and follow through,
Right.
or be okay with the other and be happy anyway.
Yeah.
Because it's living on that fence and torturing yourself in that medium ground is where it sucks. You have to break gravity of the old self, and it takes momentum,
It's so good.
and it keeps taking momentum. And the closer you get to breaking that gravity, the harder the resistance is. And it always wants to pull you
so
back.
good.
Trusting that it's going to break. It's going to give. 2 years ago, after a trip in Egypt, I traded a guy, an Egyptian guy that I saw working this, and he checked on my mala, and he's like, oh, it's very nice. And I was like, trade me. And so I traded him for his. And this is what this one is.
Wow, that's so cool.
And during that trip, I got to spend some time there and in Jordan, and then been in a couple other Muslim-based countries traveling. And the call to prayer is a really interesting thing. Have you ever spent any time in a Muslim country?
No.
Okay. So there's a call to prayer.
Okay.
So, like, over loudspeakers, like in the city, the way like tornado sirens would go off, except like 10x the amount of sirens.
Oh, wow.
A prayer comes over a loudspeaker, and everyone stops what they're doing, gets out their prayer mat, faces east toward Mecca, goes through a routine of standing and kneeling and bowing their head and saying prayer. And I was like, oh, that's fascinating. Let's look at the mechanism of it. So 5 times a day, you stop what you're doing, you get present, you take an intentional action, then you say things you're thankful for. Oh, fascinating. Weird. That's powerful. No shit. I think you could make it routine to where you're not involved.
For
and
sure.
it could be autopilot.
Right.
But what an interesting thing. And so that's like sun up, noon, 3, 5, dark is typically the calls to prayer. So after being in Egypt last year, I set alarms on my phone. And I was like, what if I do my gratitude 5 times a day? And so I started.
It's beautiful.
And kind of the idea of that was like, I don't know how to make that negative voice in my head go away. It's always been around.
Sure.
It's also been a great tool.
Right.
I don't know how to make it go away. I know that as a high performer, I'm going to take some really nasty swings at myself every day, maybe 20. I'm going to say 20 really shitty, gross things to myself. I now say 500 things that I'm grateful for. I win.
Yeah.
I win. That's the quieter voice.
Yeah.
The quieter voice. Is
You got
the
more
one that's
inputs than
complaining.
outputs, like a bank account. That's
I win.
awesome.
The conscious wins.
That's so good.
And then I've had some times where just being in different places where I get, I don't know, a couple hours, and I'll just sit on repeat and keep running through the mala for, I don't know, 30 minutes.
Wow.
And when I wrap things up, I typically clap and try to return back to present.
Yeah.
Do something to snap.
Sure.
You know, create a
trigger.
an end. Yeah. And on those days that I was doing it like that, after I finished, it kept going. It's like the flywheel had got spun up. And now it's just running in my head.
Yeah.
And after a couple years of this, I can rip.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. For
I
sure.
can go fast, and like it looks like it's not a big deal, and like you hand it to someone else, and you're like, "Yeah, man, give me 100 things you're grateful for," and they're like, "Buh."
Yeah.
No, you're overcomplicating it. I had someone at one of my retreats say a new one that I'd never heard, and he's like, "Thank you for my taste buds." I was like, "Fuck yeah,
Yeah.
that's one I've never thought of,"
Yeah.
and like, of course, that's awesome.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Back to a point that I made, right? That like our inability to manage abundance. That's why we're fat. Like as a culture.
Sure.
You know, we're one of the first civilizations in human history that's had this access to food.
Yeah.
Of course we don't handle it great. Of course we don't.
Yeah.
Can you imagine anyone from the past couple 100,000 years and be like, hey, we just have food available all the time for like whatever you'd want. In fact, anywhere that you'd like food from on Earth could be delivered here in about 20 minutes.
Right.
I don't even have to go get it.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
We got a box in the other room. You can press a button and
I'd
it's
order
like,
it until I explode.
and you won't get salmonella.
No, I'd order it until I explode.
Yeah.
Right? And so of course we don't manage that well.
Yeah.
So of course we don't manage the abundance of information we get as well either.
Right.
We don't manage any of it great. We don't manage comfort well. Instead, we act like comfort is success.
Yeah.
That like that's what we're trying to get to. That once I feel that,
Yeah.
I can relax.
Right.
I made
Interesting.
it.
Right.
There's no there.
Yeah.
But that's the lie.
That's why the average, the average lifespan post-retired is like 3 years.
Of course, you need purpose.
Yeah.
And not that your job gives you purpose. You give your job purpose. My job's purpose is to create an income so that I can do whatever the fuck I want to with my time.
Yeah.
That's its purpose.
Right.
My purpose is living my life as fully as humanly possible.
Sure.
But what a rip.
Yeah.
I get to live now versus like 100. There's no other time in history I'd rather be in.
Sure. Yeah.
No chance. Air conditioning rules.
Yeah.
I love all this, man.
Costco's dope.
Do you know how hard it would be for me to get from St. Louis to here in a van like 100 years ago? Much less no vans. I'd have to get on like a wagon.
Yeah.
Gross. It'd take a week. No, things are awesome right now. I'm not about to get lost in that.
For sure. It's awesome. Man, this is exactly what I knew would happen. I love this. Has been a beautiful conversation. I knew I didn't need notes.
Sure,
you know what I'm
sure.
saying?
Yeah.
Wrapping up, so so a few things. One, where can people find you to learn more about you? Where can they go to learn more, to get your book, to learn about the retreats, and to find whatever the fuck you want them to find?
Sure. Matthew Vincent's my name on Instagram. It's Matthew P. Vincent is my main account. And then my coaching is Not Dead Yet Life. So it's Not Dead Yet _life, and Not Dead Yet Life is the website, NDY Life. That's where the book's at. We still got some signed copies left, and then we've got retreats and everything else. And start a conversation with us. You know, if you want, send me an email. It's matt@mattvincent.net. I would love to connect, see if there's any way I can help, if I can benefit. I think the four most important words I know are, how can I help?
So good.
Even to me.
Yeah.
You know, I think one of the lessons I really took to heart, and my kind of base foundation for coaching, is 4 agreements. I start there.
It's a great book.
Totally. And like the depth of that book.
It's so slept on.
I did it last year and took my group through it to where like we did a deep dive, and on our weekly coaching calls for a month, we only covered a chapter. This is a book that's 2.5 hours long. If you listen to it, it's not long.
No, it's super short.
And so every morning when I was in the sauna during my morning practice, my morning routine, I listened to the same chapter on repeat until I was out.
Wow.
I wanted to see when I quit getting gold from it.
Oh, yeah.
When does it run out? I haven't quite found that. There's always something else, right? And so like not taking things personal, being impeccable with my word, always doing my best, don't make assumptions. I don't know how this is going to go. That's the point.
Yeah.
That's why it's an adventure. If I know how the outcome goes, it's not exciting.
Right.
The being impeccable with my word, like that's one that people get immediately. It's like, oh yeah, you know, you be there when you say you're going to be there. Like don't say things you're not going to do. And so being impeccable with my word is like, I talk to me in the way I want to be talked to.
Yeah.
I don't talk to me in the way I don't get talked to. I set the boundaries.
Sure.
You know, and then I figure out with that, like not taking things personal. That one's a tough one.
It's so
people.
hard.
That one's
Ego
really
doesn't
tough.
like that.
No. It's not personal though.
Yeah.
I mean, I can always typically trace it back to like, I got myself here. That was a decision I made somewhere. And this is what we learned.
Yeah.
Don't fuck with them anymore.
Yeah.
You know, and if anyone, like my biggest line in the sand is malicious intent.
I would agree with that.
If I ever get a sniff off of someone that operates at a malicious intent, we're fucking done.
Yeah.
You will never get access to me, my energy, or my universe again.
100%.
I ain't mad at you.
Yeah.
I ain't here to try to correct your thing.
Right.
I'm not arguing with you.
Yep.
Noted.
But doors
I
locked.
see you.
Right.
No, man, those people just try to be tricky and reframe it a different way. I don't
Yeah.
need to correct you.
Yeah.
I saw how you act.
Sure.
No worries.
It's good, man. It also shows yourself so much value. It's like you see a parent protect their kid or you protecting your wife against not so great behavior from others because it shows you value that. But I think a lot of people let others fuck with their shit essentially because they don't value themselves.
Well, they don't have any boundaries.
Right.
You know, people think holding boundaries is enforcing them by yelling and telling other people when they stepped over your boundaries, or claiming that being authentic allows you to be an asshole. How exhausting.
Yeah. Right.
Cool, you're just an asshole. That's great.
Yeah.
I'm glad you think that's honest.
Yeah.
It's really just being able to like set those boundaries for yourself and hold the line. And my boundaries are how I take care of me, who I allow to speak to me, how I let my energy get used.
So good, man. Dude, thank you so much for doing this. I know it was super last minute. I'm like, yo,
Dude, I love it.
yeah, well, and it shows, and you're very good
yeah.
at it. But I know it was super last minute. We're like, hey, let's go upstairs and do this.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I appreciate you.
Thank you, man.
Yeah.
I love getting a chance to do this. I love getting a chance to chat and like coming to speak at one of these things. Like it's such a multifaceted event because like I like being able to speak because I get a lot of the same feeling speaking that I used to get competing. Perform right fucking now.
Yeah.
Hello?
Where you can come in.
Excellent.
Either way, well, security's at the door, so we are going to finish up. Thank you guys for tuning in. Check out Matt. We'll leave all the info below in the description, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, you guys have a good one.